Hello, and welcome to my thought on Sunday, and I'm doing it on Monday this time. And as usual, I'm reminding you about my book, which is Getting the Last Laugh, and that tells you many details of the things that I'm telling you about now, because what I'm going to talk about now is something very different. Like all of us, I am appalled, I am moved to tears by what happened to Sarah Everard, and disgusted by the actions of the police and the actions of the police to cover up this kind of thing. The fact that they do abuse women is disgusting, but the fact that when they're exposed, they cover up the result. And however, I am very worried about the feeling that is overwhelming all of us, which is a hatred of men and a preconceived notion that all men are predators. And those of us who have lived as long as I have know that the vast majority of the men I know are sweeties, and there they are. And I want to put in a little something to remind us that not all men are going to grope us, are going to attack us, are going to murder us. Not all men. And there is a Jewish phrase for a man that is very special, not just kind and good, but goes out of his way to be lovely, not just to men, and not just to women, and to other men, to children, to animals, to all living things. And that word is a mensch. And I want you all to remember that, because all of us know men who are mensches. And I'm going to tell you about several. Many of them have been in my book, and it's just Getting the Last Laugh. And many of them have been in the stories and the cabarets that I do. But in this plethora of criticism of evil men, and there are evil men out there, and also, my darlings, evil women. We don't like to think it, but it's true. But in this mass distaste for the male condition, I want to tell you about several of the many men in my life that are mensches. Don't forget that word. Be a mensch. Say that to your sons. Say that to your partners. Say that to the men you love. Be a mensch. Do something extra special for living things. Kindness. There's a beautiful little girl, much younger than I, who helped me dress at one of my cabarets, and she always said to me, kindness goes a long way. So let me tell you about some of the mensches. One of them was just so unexpected. His name was Jim Darling, and these are real people. His name was Jim Darling, and he was very conservative. And I remember this was in the United States. He was very conservative. He was not, I thought, my kind of person. And then one day, he offered to take me to a special night viewing at the San Francisco Zoo. And although I abhor zoos, just like I abhor violence and what happened to Sarah, it was a special event, and I do love animals, and so I went with him. When I went with him, I realized that this man who earned a living and who took the time to notice that I was too poor to be able to afford this special night at the zoo and took me there, was a full-time carer for his wife. And there was no complaint, there was nothing. He was just more than willing to devote himself to caring for this lovely woman who was trying to desperately to preserve her independence and could not. His name was Jim Darling. And I remember thinking, this man carries a gun. This man believes in banning abortion. This man votes for people like Donald Trump. How can I like him? I can like him because he's a mensch. He takes care of his wife with no complaint. You never heard anything saying how much work, how much extra time he did to make her feel independent and able to earn a living. Because I think she was a real estate agent. I think that's how I met him. But Jim Darling, I have always felt that I never included him in any of my stories, and he is a mensch. And another mensch is a story that I have told you from the other side, from the woman that he saved, the story of Kay Dart. And I always tell the story of Kay Dart because I think it's the most beautiful story ever. But I want to tell you about Paul Dart. Paul Dart. He was a professional private garbage collector. He did not work for the city. He collected garbage, and he lived next door to me, and his truck was always filled with the most aromatic garbage, always. You couldn't open the windows when Paul came home. And I want to tell you about Paul. Paul was unbelievably homely. I don't know whether it was birth defects or what, but the man was just a homely, unaesthetic man. And every day after his, in between his pickups for his garbage, because he was determined to support himself and not work for anyone else, and at the time I'm telling you, he was single, he would stop in a park in Toledo, Ohio for lunch. And it was there he met Kay, I've told you about Kay Dart, who had had her baby at 16 on her best friend's couch. And when she had her baby, the best friend's mother threw her out of the house. And Kay was bringing up her baby, whose name was Tammy, on a park bench at the age of 16. We don't realize how brave human beings can be. And every day for lunch, Paul would take his sandwich and he would go sit and play with Tammy. He loved babies. And one day, after a couple weeks, he said to Kay, "Let me walk you home with the baby." He wanted to carry the baby because he loves babies. And she said, "This is my home." And Paul Dart said to her, he hardly knew her, and he said to her, "You cannot bring up a baby on a park bench. I'm going to marry you." And Kay Dart, because she had no money and no one to help her, she was getting food from a dumpster. She was wearing the same clothes she had worn for months, and she went to Kmart to steal clothes for her baby. Because she said to me, "I see other children dressed beautifully. Why can't my baby be dressed that way?" And whenever I say that, I want to cry. Because why couldn't her baby have the same advantages of other people? That's heartbreaking. And Paul Dart, who had very little, was willing to marry a woman he didn't even know, so that she didn't have to keep her baby on a park bench. That's a mensch. He took her home, he married her, and at the time, Kay Dart, who was really a beautiful lady, had no front teeth because the man who fathered Tammy had knocked them out. And when I discovered that Paul was not Tammy's real father, all I knew was Paul in the garbage truck. When I discovered that Paul was not, I was at their home, and Tammy was, by the time I discovered it, Tammy was about 10. And Paul was living in the trailer. He leaned out the door and he asked her, he said, "Would you mind picking up a package I left at another mobile home?" And she said to me, "I don't have to. You're not my father." And out of nowhere, my friend Kay came and took this child and literally knocked her from kingdom come. And she said to her, "That's the only father you've ever known." And that was how I found out about Paul. I found out more about Paul when I realized he was a private garbage collector. And I wrote an article about him and it was in the Toledo Blade. And of course, he thought I was God. But one of the things that he was telling me is how dedicated he was to his customers. And he was telling me that one of the women that he collected garbage for had lost her false teeth. And he spent all night going through all this garbage, and you have no idea how awful it smelled, to find this woman's false teeth. And he finally didn't find them, and he made a special trip to take her false teeth to her and clean them up first. That's a mensch. That's a mensch. Another example of a mensch is Leo McCardle. Leo McCardle. I lived alone in Pacifica with dogs and cats, and I was a victim at every turn. Tradesmen charged me double. My neighbor she was on the right, badgered me because she could. It was a very difficult time because I lived in my home, and if anything went wrong, I paid 3 times as much as anyone else to have it fixed, and I was living at that time, for any of you on the United States, on $325 a month. And then someone suggested that my toilet exploded, did some terrible thing, that I call a man named Leo McCardle. And I did. And he came and fixed my toilet, and I'm sure you'll be as surprised as I. He fell in love with me. He's 20, I would guess he's 23 years younger than I. He has a lovely, lovely wife named Carol, whom I have fallen in love with, and I'm not gay. Just a lovely, kind woman. And Leo, when he fixed my toilet and charged me something like $1, and he said to me, "Whenever you need anything, sweetheart," and he always calls me sweetheart, "whenever you need anything, sweetheart, I will help you." And then he stopped to pet the dogs. At that time I believe at that time I had Stephanie, Esther, and Harold, and Amy. And and I realized that this man absolutely adored dogs. Whenever anything went wrong from then on, I called him. But now this is every year. Starting in 1990, I started going to the Edinburgh Festival every August. And at first, I had dog sitters that came. I believed that my dogs needed to stay in their home. And I also had cats. I had many, many cats. And I believe that they deserved to stay in their home. And so I employed people to stay for the first 2 years. But then I started having trouble with the people that I had stay. It wasn't working out really well, or they would charge too much, because remember, I was living still on $325 a month. And out of that, I paid the mortgage, and I think I had something like $25 to feed myself and the animals for the rest of the month. And so finally, I believe it was the 4th summer, I called Leo McCardle, and I said, "Would you mind stopping by and feeding the animals?" And he did that from something like, it was 1990, from something like 1995 until 2013. He took care of my animals whenever I traveled. And what happened is that I started traveling to promote my books. And whenever I did, he came over and took care of the animals. But he did more than that. When I was in Italy 10 years ago, doing my cabaret, and my dog Amy died, and he made a grave for Amy, and she's in my backyard at 441 Brighton in the road in Pacifica, in the backyard. And my cat Tilly died, and it felt like a funeral procession, and he buried her as well. When I go home now, Leo's home is the place. When I go back to Pacifica, well, I don't go, I go to the Bay Area. I stay with Leo McCardle and Carol. because Leo is a mensch in every way. When I go back, I don't have a car, and Leo drives me to all my gigs in his little red truck. Leo McCardle is a mensch. When I was in Pacifica, I had a television program called What's Hot Between the Covers. It was a book review program, and everyone used to say to me, "So, Lynn Ruth, what's hot between the sheets?" And I'd say, "No, it's a book review program. What's hot between the covers?" And I am very short, and I am extremely short. And when I would interview the people that I was interviewing, because it was also a program about the arts, and when I would interview these people, I looked like a pygmy next to them. And there was a man there named James Parsons, who had cured. He was an alcoholic, a former alcoholic, who still went to meetings because he said, "Those are the best friends I have." And when he saw that I looked so little, he never said a word. But the next day that I came in to do a television interview, there were 2 pillows on the chair so that I would be the same height as the people that I interviewed. And then I had an artist come who did seascapes, not so much cityscapes, and they left the painting there because I didn't know what to do with it. And James made it into a mural to be the backdrop for my program. So then I had a cityscape of San Francisco and the wonderful skyline as the backdrop for my program. And when I often had him over for dinner, and whenever I had him over for dinner, without a word, he would wash the dishes, scour the sink, and clean the stove. James Parsons was a mensch, one of many, many lovely men in this world. When I did the Edinburgh Festival, I was alone all the time. I carried all my props. I did all my promotion. I handed out all my flyers. I did not do a very good job. And one year, I was doing a cabaret called Alzheimer's Cha-Cha-Cha. And I will resurrect that, I promise all of you, because it's a beautiful, beautiful story about a woman with Alzheimer's. I wanted to have it filmed. And one of my friends said to me, "Listen, I know somebody who's filming and it won't cost you anything." And that was Richard Daniels. And Richard Daniels was a policeman. And I think it's important for you to know that he was a full-time policeman. He's now retired. And Richard Daniels is a mensch. If Richard Daniels had been at that demonstration for poor Sarah Everard, he would not have pushed, shoved, or hurt any human being, because Richard Daniels is a mensch. After he filmed my show, he was leaving to go back home. And he said to me, "I'll send you a tape." And he did in January, because Richard Daniels also puts off what you can do. He doesn't do today what you can do tomorrow. And in January, he sent me a tape that was absolutely awful. And he said to me, "I'll edit it." And at that time, I was starting to go to the Brighton Festival in May. He said, "If you're going to the Brighton Festival, you'll stay overnight at our house, and then I'll drive you to Brighton. No cost, no charge, nothing, because Richard Daniels is a mensch." I went to his home, and I discovered that his wife Anne had had a kidney transplant. But the story of that is also another example of what Richard Daniels is like. Because after her transplant, she rejected a part of the kidney, and she was about to die. And he took her to the hospital and saved her life, Richard Daniels. In any case, he drove me to Brighton. He stayed to film the cabaret I was doing then, which is Aging is Amazing. And then he drove back, and I paid him for that. But then in August, he suggested that he meet me, since he was going there anyway, and would drive me to the festival. And to my shock, and I mean my shock, when he drove me to the festival, he took me to my venue, helped me unload everything at the place I was staying, and then when I was doing my show, he appeared out of nowhere, and he helped take the tickets. He helped. Well, there weren't really tickets; it was free. But he helped usher the people to their seats. He stood at the door when they left with the bucket, so that never ever did I ever have a collection that was empty. When I was doing it myself, very often people would leave, and by the time I got to the door, there was no one, and I would have no money. Richard Daniels did that for me, and for the remaining several years that I went to Edinburgh, Richard Daniels always took me there and brought me home. But the major thing that Richard Daniels did, as I say, because he is a good person, is that on my 80th year at the not 80 years at the festival, but when I was 80, I was supposed to do a show that was produced by Bill Smith, and at the last minute, Bill Smith, who backed out of many of his promises to me. He's from Edinburgh, and those from Brighton, and those of you who know the latest TV and the latest bar, that's his. But he backed out on many promises to me, including bringing me over here and promised me a visa. But he had arranged for me to go to Edinburgh and present Granny's Gone Wild, which was the prize-winning cabaret that he produced. And at the last minute, he backed out. And I called Richard and I said, I think I can't go to the festival. We have a venue, but I can't possibly afford what it will take to put this show on, because it had videos and it had very complicated tech. And Richard said to me, no, you're going. You're going. I'm seeing to it that you're going. And he called Bill Smith, and the two of them together arranged for him to run the videos, to bring the props, and to take care of the show so that I could put it on my 80th year in the Edinburgh Festival. And there was no charge. Richard did not charge me anything. Richard is one of my closest friends still, but he is also a mensch. I'm going to give you one more mensch, and then I'm going to leave you with that so that we know that there are many, many beautiful men in this world, many, many beautiful men who would never, ever harm a hair on anyone's head. Instead, when they see problems, they go and help. And that man is Mark Nunn. And I am actually going over to his house for dinner tonight. I am bringing the dinner to say thank you, because I put a notice on Nextdoor. And those of you who don't know about Nextdoor, Nextdoor is a wonderful website that you should join. It's where neighbors help one another. And when I lived in Toledo, Ohio, you didn't have to go on Nextdoor. You just looked Nextdoor and the neighbors helped you. But here, because everything is so computerized, you go on Nextdoor. And I was having trouble with my computer, and there was no way that I could afford what it costs to fix Apple computers. And I put the notice up on Nextdoor, and nobody responded. Nobody responded. About 2 weeks later, I got an email that said, nobody picked up on this. I'll help you. And that was Mark Nunn, who has taken care of me and my computer for the last 2.5 years. He's a mensch. Lots of mensches in this world. So again, I'm going to say to you, all you women there, turn to your partner, turn to your sons, and say to them, be a mensch. Be a mensch. That's the way we do it nowadays. And thank you so much for joining me for my thoughts on Sunday that I'm doing on Monday.